I used to think I was lucky to have a small, cozy family. My husband was a quiet, responsible man, and our two well-behaved children were my pride. My life seemed perfect. I didn't need anything more. But, like a worn-out shirt that had been used for many years, the emotions that once burned brightly had now faded. The evenings in our family gradually turned into long silences. My husband would often come home late, exhausted after a long day of work. Our conversations had dwindled to just talking about the kids, meals, and bills that needed to be paid. We no longer laughed together, nor did we share spontaneous hugs or romantic dates. Instead, the days became a monotonous routine, a mechanical cycle. I had tried many ways to revive our marriage, cooking the dishes he liked, suggesting we watch a movie together, or simply sitting down to talk. But all I received in return were sluggish nods and eyes glued to the phone screen. There were nights when I lay beside him, feeling as though I was lying next to a stranger. My heart felt empty, and the loneliness slowly consumed me from the inside. Perhaps I had become accustomed to accepting it. I told myself this was the inevitable reality of marriage, that the intense love we had at the beginning would eventually fade. But deep inside, I longed for something else. A spark, an emotion, or simply someone who would truly listen to me, who would genuinely care for me. During those days, I never thought that the change would come from a young girl I met at the nail salon. It seemed like an ordinary encounter, one that didn't seem special at first, but it sparked feelings in me that I thought I had lost forever. That day, I went to the nail salon as usual after a long and tiring day of work. The shop was small but very comfortable, with warm yellow lighting and a peaceful atmosphere. As always, I chose to get my nails done in the late afternoon to have some time to relax. I was greeted by a young girl named Emily, about 20 years old, with a graceful figure and a certain charm. Emily had smooth, fair skin, bright eyes, and an attentive gaze that made me feel she wasn't just a nail technician, but almost like a friend. But what caught my attention the most was her figure. Emily wasn't very tall, about 1.60 meters, but her body exuded an irresistible allure. She wore a white t-shirt that clung to her figure, accentuating her gentle curves. When she bent down to grab a tool, I couldn't help but notice her slim waist, the smooth skin like silk, and the curves of her hips, which created a natural beauty I had never seen before. The way she moved, gracefully and lightly, made me unconsciously pay attention. When Emily began working on my nails, I felt a strange sensation, as if everything around me faded away, and only she remained. She moved quickly and skillfully, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. When she stood up to grab more tools, I inadvertently caught a glimpse of the soft curves of her body, the delicate lines I had only seen in movies or artistic paintings. Just for a moment, but it made me feel uneasy. At first, I didn't realize this feeling, but as I looked at Emily, I suddenly felt a pull I had never felt during the long years of marriage. It wasn't the intense attraction of romantic love, but more of a surprise, a new feeling about something that had never appeared in my life before. "Which style would you like today?" Emily asked, her eyes sparkling, but I couldn't immediately respond. The feeling I couldn't explain lingered in my heart. "I'll go with a simple style. You can choose whatever you like," I replied, trying to hide the strangeness of my feelings. Emily smiled and began working. Every time she bent down, stood up, or turned her back, I could sense something gentle but magnetic. The soft curves of her body seemed like an irresistible pull. I felt a strange wave pass through my body, making it hard for me to not focus on her too much. I didn't understand why, but every time I thought of her, I felt uneasy, as if these new emotions were slowly taking over me, yet I didn't know how to confront them. As time passed, my relationship with my husband became increasingly dull. We were just two people living under the same roof, sharing responsibilities and obligations, but no longer having those close, loving moments. In the evenings, instead of talking about our day, we simply ate dinner, then silently sat in the living room, each lost in our own world. I no longer felt happy when I looked at my husband, no longer felt loved or cared for. Everything slowly became a habit, a never-ending cycle. Meanwhile, each time I visited the nail salon, I felt a sense of comfort. Emily became the only person who made me feel valued and important. On the afternoons, I stopped by her shop, sometimes just to get my nails done, sometimes to chat, but each time I felt her closeness and care. I couldn't deny that when I was with her, I felt like myself, heard and able to share things I had never spoken to anyone else about. One day, I had to work late at the office and came home later than usual. Because I was so tired, I didn't want to go straight home, so I drove straight to Emily's nail salon. The shop had closed, but the lights were still on, and I saw the door slightly ajar. I walked in and saw Emily still sitting at the counter, busy tidying up. When she saw me, her gaze was surprised, but then she smiled gently. "Aren't you going home? Been busy?" Emily asked, her voice still soft and caring. I just smiled tiredly. "Yeah, there's some work at the office today. You're probably about to head home too, right?" "I'm almost done. If you'd like to sit for a bit, I can make you some tea," Emily said. I thanked her and sat down on the chair, and the fatigue seemed to melt away the moment I was near Emily. I watched her work skillfully, her hands moving deftly like an artist. The feeling inside me became more and more unclear. I couldn't stop looking at her, the attraction growing stronger each moment. Then, for some reason, in a sudden moment, as Emily stood up to grab something, she accidentally brushed past me. I felt her body lightly touch mine, a smooth but powerful sensation. I was slightly startled, but I couldn't deny that my body responded in a strange way. I turned to look into Emily's eyes, and I saw the silence between us, an unusual silence, full of emotion. Emily stood still for a moment, then slowly moved closer to me, her eyes never leaving mine. When the distance between us was only a few centimeters, I felt her breath, close and warm. All the thoughts in my mind stopped, leaving only a feeling of confusion and excitement. Unable to resist anymore, I raised my hand to touch her cheek, and immediately, Emily gently pulled me closer. And then, in a moment filled with overwhelming emotions, our lips met. The first kiss was sweet and unexpected. It wasn't a hurried kiss, but a soft touch, a way of expressing things that hadn't been said aloud. My hands trembled as I embraced her, feeling as though the whole world had shrunk in that moment. All barriers, all worries seemed to disappear, leaving only us in the quiet space of the nail salon. When we pulled away, both of us were silent, but there was no need for words. I felt a tremor in my heart, an emotion I had never experienced before. Though my heart was still anxious and confused, I knew that this relationship had crossed a new threshold, and it was no longer just a simple connection. I felt my body shiver as Emily moved closer. Her lips touched mine for the first time, gently and slowly, as if we were discovering something new and adventurous. The first kiss was not rushed, but soft, and with every touch of our lips, the emotions within me grew stronger. My hand gently touched her shoulder, feeling the smoothness of her skin beneath my touch. Emily raised her hand to grasp my wrist, gently pulling me closer. Her body was soft and warm, and I could feel her breath, as if we were blending into one. When I pulled her into an embrace, our bodies seemed to meld together, and I could clearly feel every curve of hers. This feeling was new, overwhelming, yet disorienting. Emily whispered my name softly, then gently stroked my hair, as if trying to soothe the chaotic emotions within me. Everything around us seemed to stop, leaving only our bodies, slow gestures, full of understanding and love, in the small space of the nail salon. All worries, all obstacles seemed unimportant. Only this feeling, between us, mattered. I stayed at Emily's shop until midnight, when everything outside had fallen silent. The shop had been closed for a long time, but no one rushed to leave. It felt as though time had stopped when we were together. When I finally stood up to leave, I felt a change in my body, like everything had shifted. The emotions inside me were no longer vague, but a clear truth, a fullness I had never known before. I walked out the door of the shop, my steps slightly unsteady, yet full of freedom. My lips still felt the warmth of that kiss, as if a part of me didn't want to leave Emily. With every step I took on the darkened road, I felt the difference in my mind more clearly. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily, her warm hands, the close embrace, and the gentle kiss. Everything kept repeating in my head, like a song that wouldn't stop, and I couldn't escape the feeling of being lost in it. As I drove home, I tried to stop and take a breath. My heart was filled with anxiety, confusion, and questions about what had just happened. I wondered if I was doing something wrong, if I was betraying my husband. But the more I thought, the clearer my feelings for Emily became. I couldn't deny that what I had felt, what I had shared with her, was something completely new and different. When I arrived home, it was late at night, and my husband still wasn't back. I walked into the room, but I couldn't sleep. The emotions inside me kept swirling, chaotic. I couldn't stop thinking about Emily, about the kiss, about the connection we had just shared. Every time I closed my eyes, I only saw her image clearly, her gaze full of care and warmth, making me feel even more lost in my own life. My heart felt like a tangled mess, unable to shake off the overwhelming emotions after my encounter with Emily. I felt my body stiffen, as if I were carrying a burden I couldn't share. Standing in front of the bedroom door, I felt the quiet inside, but that very silence made me feel suffocated. My husband still wasn't home, and this room, once my sanctuary, now felt like a foreign space. I asked myself if I still felt anything for that man. Did the love I once had for him really exist, or was it just something that had been prolonged out of duty and habit? I set my purse on the table, but I couldn't shake the thoughts creeping in my mind. Images of Emily kept repeating. I couldn't forget that kiss. Couldn't forget the feeling of our bodies so close, as if there were no distance between us, as if all the things I had repressed had been released. I remembered vividly the sensation when my hand touched her body, the soft curves of her, the smooth skin. I felt as though it was part of me. This feeling was undeniable. It was intense and real to the point where I couldn't think of anything else. For a moment, I felt like a stranger to myself. I couldn't understand this feeling. What was right about all this? I still had my family, my husband, and my children. But in that brief moment, I had found something new, a feeling I had forgotten long ago. The attention, the care that I received from Emily made me feel loved, appreciated, not because of my responsibilities, but because of who I truly was. I sat down on the bed, my heart heavy. Every decision now was filled with contradictions. Was I betraying myself? Could I dare to live truthfully with this feeling? When I looked at the man I had lived with for so many years, I no longer found joy, no longer felt cherished. But with Emily, I felt a connection, a resonance that I had never experienced before. With every passing minute, I felt more lost. Should I ignore these feelings and return to the life I once had? Or was I facing an opportunity to completely change, to live a new life? A life I never knew existed until now? Every question made me more confused. But one thing I knew for sure. I couldn't go back to how things were, and a part of me had changed forever.